Good morning. Good morning, everyone, committee members and the public. I'm Jim McQuillan. I'm chair of the California Workforce Pathways Joint Advisory Committee for 2024. I wanted to thank you for joining us today. Today's meeting is conducted in a hybrid format with staff outside at the California Department of Education headquarters, and members are attending via Zoom. I ask everyone's patience as we navigate through today's meeting in the new hybrid format. Today's meeting is being broadcast through a live webcast. Interested parties can view the broadcast by visiting the California Workforce Pathways Joint Advisory Committee webpage and clicking on the live webcast link located under the 2024 public meeting notices and agendas. A recording of this meeting will be archived at the California Workforce Pathways Joint Advisory webpage in about a week. Please keep all microphones on mute. All attendance and motions will be taken by roll call. Committee members will use the raise hand feature in the live webcast to be recognized, providing a comment or a question. I will ask for public comment for each agenda item and again at the end of the meeting. Public comments can be made via Zoom, in person, email, or by phone. All options are explained on the posted agenda. Today we have two items to cover. First, we will have an update on the California plan, and then we'll hear some, let's see, I lost my place here. First, we'll hear an update on the California State Plan for Career Technical Education, which will include an overview of the activities that have been completed through the time of the project and next steps as we move forward with the state plan. We will conclude today's meeting with an update on CTE incentive grant data metrics. Before we get started, I want to introduce a new member of the California Department of Education team. I would like to welcome Dr. Erica Torres, Deputy Superintendent of Student Support Services. Dr. Torres, please introduce yourself to the committee.
Good morning, committee members, and thank you so much, Chair McQuillan. My name is Dr. Erica Torres, and I'm so honored to join the Career and College Transition Division as their interim division director, and really honored because we have an amazing team. I also serve as Deputy Superintendent of Public Instruction for the Student Support Services branch at the California Department of Education. Prior to joining our amazing CDE team, I served as a superintendent for the Inglewood Unified School District. And in that role, I prioritized integrating college and career readiness programs into our K through 12 schools to ensure all of our students had equitable access to life-changing opportunities. I had the honor of serving our community to offer CTE pathways programs, workforce development programs, and dual enrollment opportunities for all of our students. And so through those opportunities, I have witnessed firsthand how career technical education can transform the lives of all of our students by providing them with the essential skills and confidence that they need to pursue their dreams, and also opening doors to careers that were once out of reach to them. And so I look forward to collaborating with all of you and our valued partners. And I know that together we will ensure that every student within the great state of California will have access to high quality career technical education. So thank you again for welcoming me. I look forward to our partnership. Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Torres. As we call this meeting to order, Rachel, we must have a quorum. Can you call the roll call, please?
Chair McQuillan?
Yes, here.
Member Escobedo?
Here.
Vice Chair Rawlings?
Present.
Member Rodriguez,
Present.
and Member Williams.
I'm here.
Yes, like we have a quorum here. We have 5 members in attendance. At this time at 9:37, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before moving forward, Rachel, will you announce the staff members that are here to support today's meeting?
Today we have quite a crew here in the room. It's myself, Rachel Moran from the California Department of Education. We also have Michaela Bertocchini from the California Department of Education, as well as Jonathan Eisler and Suda from AMARD. And then we have Laura Rodriguez from the State Board of Education. And then we have Anthony Cordova virtually from the Chancellor's Office. Sorry.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. We have a rather short agenda today with only 2 items here. The first, we'd like to take up the minutes, and I'd like to seek approval of the preliminary report of action draft minutes for our April 26, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve. Rawlings.
Vice Chair Rawlings has made a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. Member Rodriguez.
Member Rodriguez, the second is. Call for the vote, please. Oh, let's see. Are there any comments from our committee members? And we'd like to put the public comment slide up for any public comments. Any committee member comments for the minutes?
Just point of information, we're approving the minutes, right? Because I thought you mentioned a report, though. Did you say preliminary action report or minutes?
The minutes, please.
Okay.
Any comments from our committee? Are there any comments from the public?
There's no public comment on this item.
Okay. Rachel, please call the roll call vote.
Chair McQuillan,
Aye.
Member Escobedo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rawlings,
Yes.
Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Member Williams.
Yes.
Motion has carried to approve our minutes from April 26, 2024. We will now move on to item number 2, the update on the California State Plan for Career Technical Education. I would like to welcome back Dr. Erica Torres, Deputy Superintendent of the Student Support Services Branch, and Tony Landis, from Director of Jobs for the Future, to guide the committee through the update on the California State Plan for Career Technical Education project and activities. Dr. Torres.
Thank you, Chair McQuillan. And today's update on the California State Plan for Career Technical Education project comes at a pivotal moment for our state and students. And before we begin, I want to take this moment to express our sincere gratitude to Tony Landis and the Jobs for the Future team. Since its inception, JFF has been an outstanding partner by leading regional meetings that fostered collaboration, developing comprehensive resources tailored to our state's unique needs, developing implementation frameworks that will serve our students well into the future. And so, as this is Tony's last meeting with us, I would like to personally commend his personal dedication to this work, his team's unwavering commitment to equity, excellence, and innovation, and the lasting impact that he and his team have made on CTE in California. So, Tony, thank you so much for joining us today and for your partnership and leadership. I'm now pleased to invite Tony to guide us through today's implementation update. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that. Um, it's been a long journey, but it's been a great journey, and just excited to really share the work that we've been able to do. Again, my name is Tony Landis, and I'm a director at Jobs for the Future, and it's a pleasure to be in front of you all once again. I think the last time that I was in front of you, we provided updates on where we were in the process of really starting to create the resources that came out of the meeting. So one of the things I want to do today is just really kind of do a recap and then get us to the place where we last left off and really get into the conversation about the resources that we were able to develop for the state that we're super excited about. But before we do that, I do want to say thank you on behalf of Jobs for the Future to the California State team of the Chancellor's Office, the CDE, the State Board of Education, CWPJAC, just everyone who participated in the discussions, the conversations, and everything to bring this work to fruition. And I guess with that, let's talk about the work. If we can go to the first slide. So the work and how we initially started this when we were thinking about the work that needed to be done, we were going to break it out into phases. And our first phase was really kind of understanding the context of California. What are all the assets that California has? What are the partnerships? What are the connections that could be made in order to do the level of work that we were going to do, which was, of course, tied into career pathways, but mainly focused specifically within the CTE realm. And then phase two, the drafting of the state plan, and not just drafting the state plan, but coming to a final version of something that we can use. And, the one thing about this state plan was that it was never a mandatory plan, was nothing in statute, but was really created to be a guide to really enhance the work that was already taking place in the state, and just continue to do more great things within that CTE space. And then phase three, the regional implementation, really creating the tools and resources that regional pathway partners could use in order to be successful in the work that they're doing with workers or with learners and workers. And then the final phase of everything, phase four, is just really how do we measure these outcomes? We had conversations about the development of a data dashboard. And of course, there's so many different data systems within the state and different connections that could be made even at a local level. And so, how do we really create a strategy that helps us really measure what those outcomes could look like and really feed into a data dashboard that is useful for all the citizens of the state. Next slide, please. So phase one, as was already mentioned, this work started back in 2021, with the connections that we made with the state teams. And one of the things that we did in creating this context of California within the space of CTE was that we held focus groups. Then we held study sessions that brought folks together to really learn, even from national experts in the room, about the various things that were happening within dual enrollment, the various things that were going on in work-based learning across the country, and not just across the country, but also within the state of California, and really trying to understand the total context of all of this. And then, of course, the background research that was a part of the work in order to really bring it all together and think through how we could create a state plan, which would ultimately really be a strategic plan on how we could strategically move forward in the CTE space. And then that moved us into phase two. Next slide, please. So phase two, as you can see here, with the state goals. So out of the conversations that we had, the focus really gravitated to four areas, and these became the goals that we wanted to focus in on, which was boost data-informed decision-making. How do we expand work-based learning? Growing dual enrollment in all regions and all areas. So not just in the urban areas, but how do we do that also within the rural areas of the state? And then just really tapping into the CTE teacher shortage and the issues that surround that, and really understanding what's happening there so we can create solutions that can help move us in a better direction on ensuring that we have teachers in the classroom that can teach our young people and adults about the various programs that CTE provides. Next slide, please. And as we get into the next phase, so it sounds like it was moving very quickly, but there were those moments where there were some lulls in the movement, and but we finally got to a place where after we finished our state plan in March 2023, it was approved by the board. We were ready to get into the next phase of the work, and that was get the information out to the people so everybody knows what's going on. So even though it was put out to the masses, we hadn't stood in front of the people to really provide insight on what the plan is, what the plan is trying to do, and how everyone could participate in it. And so the first thing we did is that we held 10 regional convenings across the great state of California. It was like a world tour. Felt like we were almost in a concert where we did like a 5-week tour. So we really kind of condensed all the visits into a short time period, because we knew that we wish we could have broadened that out. And I don't recommend anyone do work like that within a 5-week span across the entire state. But we knew that we were under some constraints to make sure that we could get it out in a specific time. And so we were successful in doing this. And I'm so glad that we were able to get out in front of people because just the feedback that we received, folks were excited about the work. And they were also excited to connect with their colleagues, where many of them, if you're thinking about, if we can go back and think about COVID, some of them hadn't really seen their colleagues in a few years because of the pandemic. And so this gave people an opportunity to come out to discuss CTE and discuss this plan and how these connections could be made between dual enrollment, work-based learning, the teacher shortage, and really trying to figure out how we can maximize our data efforts. Next slide, please. And so out of that work, out of the convenings, really brought us into the phase of identifying what those resources could look like. So one of the things that we did during the convenings that we held a post-convening survey, and really we took from those results, which we asked questions about the goals and which of those goals were a high priority, and really some of the things that they would want to see happen within the state that could assist them in at a regional level in being more responsive quickly and really doing more to bring more students into CTE to do this great work. And then having conversations with the field. One of the things that we did within the summer months leading into the fall was reaching out to different pathway teams, pathway partners within the various regions to really understand what their needs were. Even though we had this post-convening survey, as you know, with surveys, everybody doesn't fill one out. So, let's get a little deeper and really find out what the needs are of the masses and incorporate that into the resources that we'll create. And then the final stage there, discussions with the state team, which were ongoing throughout the entire process, which, I got to say, I value the partnership because, people look at it and say, yeah, well, it's contract work, but even beyond that, just the partnership, the camaraderie, and the insight from all the players in the room to create the collaborations that were needed in order to do this level of work within the entire state, and figuring out, from those conversations, what would be the best resources to push forward. Next slide, please. And so then our resources. So out of those discussions, we identified three main ones that we wanted to do a toolkit. And the toolkit would have various categories that would focus on areas within the goals, regional implementation plan and guidance. So you build this toolkit and you have these resources available, but at a regional level, how do people use those? And what kind of guidance can we provide that would help them be able to do this work, at a high level? Of course, none of it is mandatory, but it does give them an option and provide suggestions on how this work could be accomplished. And then the state team implementation plan at a state level. What does that look like in order to be able to work with regions to provide the type of technical assistance that would be needed, to provide the type of communication and that could be helpful in making the connections at a regional level, and of course managing that data and the rest of the processes that go along with that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the toolkit on this next slide. So the toolkit. So one of the main things is already mentioned how we pulled out the goals. What we looked at here was, okay, well, let's continue to focus in on those four main goals, because that really drives the work that would happen out in the field. So that's what we did. So we took each of those goals and created a self-assessment for each one of those goals. And within each of those self-assessments, we looked at it in a way of, for example, like with dual enrollment. So looking at dual enrollment, what's, the highest level of work that could happen within a dual enrollment situation or setting? And then how do we measure that up against the work that folks are already doing? So looking at the ideal state, and then looking at the current state, and then trying to work towards solutions and figure out, where folks might be and where they could be based on additional work that could be done. And of course, that's where the resources play into this work to help them get to that next level. And so there's a self-assessment in the work that we created, in this toolkit that we created for each one of the goals that regional pathway partners can use. And then the other four categories that laid out, and again, looking at each of the goals. So looking at dual enrollment, under each goal in dual enrollment, there's the category of guidance documents and best practices, where we take national examples as well as those things that happen in California and include them as resources within this toolkit with links to the various organizations or various documents that are available that regional teams can use to help them with this work. There's templates, research and case studies that are available that speak to the context of the particular goal that is set. And that's from the dual enrollment all the way to the teacher shortage and trying to understand and figure those things out. Next slide, please. And then the next resource that we were able to create, regional implementation plan and guidance, and really how we broke this out. And this is kind of the outline of this document, where we looked at the implementation process and starting at the foundation, which are the leadership teams, the regional leadership teams, and the partnerships that could be forged within a region. It's easy to do, pathway work from one institution to another, or to one institution to a workforce board, to maybe a secondary or post-secondary. But how do you do that collaboratively within a regional structure, and do it in a way where there's a true system at play that helps folks move the needle along. The communication that's necessary in that, and the data management that's a part of that, is really what we talk about in this implementation process. And then, of course, you always want to lead with the goals. And so we go back to our four main goals of the CTE state plan, and we provide, again, as suggestions. This isn't mandatory for folks to do these things, but to suggest, if you did these things, this is what you could potentially create, and the type of work that could come out of the regional planning that you do. And so we provide approaches to support the goal within this guide that we made for regional partners, and then also instructions and direction on designing the type of technical assistance at a regional level that can support the goal. Because in many cases, you may have a county office that is working with, various institutions in the region or the entire region. And, this can be a help for them to, create certain workshops based off of some of the suggestions that we provide in this guidance document. Next slide, please. And then the last of the phase 3 resources was the state team implementation plan. And, the thing with this particular plan, our main focus was always collaboration. And of course, the state team with CDE and the Chancellor's Office have been meeting for about 5 years. And hopefully, so this wasn't taken away from any of that, but, looking at how do we enhance that partnership? How do we collaborate in ways that we maybe haven't collaborated before? And really that starts with agency alignment. How do we align our agency work? What do we make priorities when we talk about CTE? And I'm talking about this in the context of CTE, maybe not the entire agency at this point, but how do we do it within the context of CTE, and how do we manage that data? How do we communicate not only between offices, but also to folks out in the field, which was something that came from the field about understanding the communication and being able to do that as a necessary tool and resource, and then providing the type of technical assistance at a state level that would be helpful for folks out in the field. So things may happen at the regional level in terms of regional partners creating technical assistance for teachers and other things of that nature. But at a state level, how do we do that between both agencies to bring partners together like we did with the convenings? Or how do we go out to partners like we did, during the convenings to really support through workshops and other necessary means that provide the type of help and support that they desire. And then we also included an activities calendar as kind of a sample that the state team can kind of pick and choose. Again, this is all flexible. And as we talked as a group while we were creating this work, everybody understood it as such. And knowing that there's pieces and parts that, hey, maybe this isn't something that we do right now, but hey, this other thing that, we've listed, maybe that's something that we take on right now because it's dealing with data, and we want to have this conversation with people out in the field about it. Next slide, please. And that brings us into our phase 4, which was the final piece of our work. Again, thinking about the context of a data dashboard. And really, how do you do that? And so in this particular document that we created, it's really talking about data management and how you develop a strategy to feed a data dashboard. What does that look like? Creating performance measures with the goals. And so we lay out examples of what a performance measure could look like for each one of the goals. Because when we think about the CTE state plan goals, there's also strategies that are embedded within those goals. I think there's like three strategies to each one of those goals. And, thinking about all of those things in the space of data, how do we create the type of measures? How do we create the type of strategies that bring us closer to reaching goals that we may set? And then after we create these goals, how do we measure them? And not only measure them, but how do we display them to, the rest of the population? And we can do that through a data dashboard. So one of the things that we were able to do in this piece of work was to really show that process and the steps that the agencies would need to take in order to create that level of alignment. And so this means data sharing agreements. This means, working outside of the context that you may normally work in order to be able to produce the results within, again, the context of CTE. And that's not to take away from any other data systems, because I don't think you can, but how do we combine our efforts to create something that displays specific CTE type of data that's going to be useful to folks out in the field that align with the goals that we put in the state plan. And so we put all of that into this last document that we created. And then our final slide. And I think the final slide is the next step. So with that, that's more or less everything that we were able to do in these last few years on, getting us from that stage one to the final stage now, where the state teams have tools and resources, in their hands to be able to, really work with regional partners in a new and different way and provide some helps for those regional partners. I know there's conversation, because even when we were doing this work, I think in the mid part of our convenings, I think it's when the executive order came out for the master plan. So there's that conversation that was going on as well. And, I've received many questions from people out in the field about, well, how does this align, and there's definitely alignment there. Again, CTE, you think about CTE, it's, a smaller part of the bigger picture of what the master plan is trying to do and wants to do. And so I think these resources that we created can easily be connected into that work as it comes to a finalization of a report and other steps that are going to move forward with the master plan. And so I guess with that being said, I want to hand it back over to Dr. Torres.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm going to hand it over to Chair McQuillan.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Tony, for all your work over the years and throughout the state of California. We thank you for your hard work.
Our pleasure, definitely our pleasure.
I would now like to invite committee members to provide any comments. Please use the raise hand feature. Remember to stay on mute until your name has been called. After you've completed your comments, please lower your hand and place yourself on mute. While committee members are sharing their thoughts and comments, we'll put up the public comment slide for any public comments. All right. Again, we want to thank you for your work, and throughout the state. And our great state is very diverse here in terms of where I'm at up here in the rural part of the state up here. And I see back in 23, you did a whirlwind tour of taking public comment and the convenings from Eureka to Bakersfield, all over the place. It's a lot of travel time.
Yeah,
I wonder if you
it was
can.
fun. It was fun. From Eureka all the way down to San Diego,
Yeah,
we did it all.
great. So, can you make any comments about what you saw in terms of the diversity and the rural parts of our state have a lot of challenges. They don't have as many CTE type of options for the students and versus some of our more larger metropolitan areas. Can you talk about some of those challenges and differences, what you saw in terms of rural versus larger communities?
Right, absolutely. I think one of the things, so thinking about when we were up in Eureka, and of course it's definitely a smaller area. It's not like being in LA or in Anaheim where we had a meeting but I do think that what they did have, they were able to do good work. But a lot of the commentary that came from folks was that just wanting more supports in certain areas which could really help them. And we listened to that, and hopefully with the resources that we were able to create is going to be helpful in that work. But I think at the end of the day, whether it was rural or urban, the regional pathway partnership teams and leadership just wanted to make sure that, their voices were being heard, and that, the type of support that they need, that they'll be able to get it. And I think that's why it's going to be important, like moving forward. And I know that this is the ideas of both the chancellor's office as well as CDE in working together and from conversations that we had to make sure that they could come out and do more like the convenings, to be in front of the folks and really see, what's happening within their neck of the woods. And so, I think that was one of the main things that came from everyone, was that just, the excitement and the thankfulness of the state team actually, being there, and them having a chance to communicate them within that way as opposed to virtually.
Yes, thank you. I see Vice Chair Rawlings has his hand up. Bill, you want to go ahead?
Sure, thanks. I've got a few questions, a series of them, but Tony, I think you answered part of my first one already, which was about the integration with the master plan for career ed. And maybe it's more commentary here as well, is I think it's absolutely wonderful that we have a plan that is now going to be able to be integrated into this larger plan. Are there any areas particularly where we might need to, because you've seen our plan from the start. Are there any areas where we might want to take a look at the plan that we have adopted and make adjustments to better integrate with the master plan for career ed?
That's a good question. And I probably would need more time to kind of think through, Bill. But I do think that what we were able to create, really ties, like I said, ties easily into the concepts of the master plan. Again, like CTE is just a part of the work that the master plan lays out, and especially with the alignment to workforce. And I think everything that we've put in the plan, really within the state plan, really sets us up to easily, as I mentioned earlier, just to create that alignment. So if I have more time, I could probably think through it a little bit more.
It's okay. Yeah, I put you on the spot.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But I think that's what I'm seeing right now. I don't think there's any holes based on the focus that we took in creating the state plan. I think it is just really all aligns to everything that the master plan is laid out.
That's great. So hopefully we did like half the work for him. That would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
The next question, it might not be for you, it might be for any of our staff. I'd be really interested in doing a deeper dive in the toolkit and some of the best practices that we have out there, particularly, and this may be more for Vice Chancellor Cordova, that we have the CCAOE conference coming up, I think, in spring, which is really our primary CTE venue for our convening for our faculty. And I'd be interested in seeing the toolkit, the best practices, all of that be presented and recapped there at that conference. So hopefully we're planning on doing that. I don't know if Vice Chancellor Cordova's on, can let me know.
The applications are open right now for next spring's conference. So, it's definitely something that we could engage in.
Yeah, I think it would be great. And then I think the last piece I had was around data. We're doing a lot of work on data at the Chancellor's office, particularly around a Common Cloud student data platform that will eventually hopefully be expanded into a larger data set. And just wanting to kind of tap our staff to really be keeping an eye on that and hopefully working with that Common Cloud data platform working group to make sure that the data that and the structures we have here are really going to be able to feed and inform that data platform in the future. Because I think as we look towards the Cradle to Career data platform and that system and how we're sharing out data there, we can do a shared system like information sharing, data sharing agreements between our agencies that then will allow us to do a more timely look forward and back at populations, especially if we start working with the CSU to track these students more real time. So just wanted to share those thoughts. And Tony, I think I'm, aside from maybe Rachel, I'm probably the last person here that was on the Joint Advisory Committee before this all started. So I know what we had originally envisioned, and it really feels like we've hit exactly the mark that we were looking to. And so I really wanted to echo everyone else's comments that we really appreciate your work, your whole team's work over there at Jobs for the Future, and look forward to seeing how we get this implemented.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate hearing that.
Thank you, Bill. I want to recognize Member Williams has his hand up.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. Tony, appreciate the presentation. And I think I've been on this committee for 2 years. And Bill has just been my mentor in understanding the history of this committee. And I have served on the California Workforce Development Board and the local board for 12 years and have been connected to the system. And I work in a district. I lead family and community engagement in the K-12 district. And so I think your methodology is solid, like the way that you all are approaching this work. And so some of the questions that come to my mind is, are we at the point to where we actually have some data? And from a parent standpoint, so if I'm a parent or a family of a 7th or 8th grader, and I'm looking for where the next step is for my kid, is there a place that they can go? You know how some parents use grade schools, they'll use CASP data to really figure out where their students are going to go. Like, how do I find out what districts are really rocking it when it comes to work-based learning or CTE? Where is that information stored? That's just one of my questions. And then as it relates to CCI, the college and career indicator stuff, is it your experience? My experience is that a lot of times the information is not current or it's not updated, or districts struggle with accurately reporting their information. And so as you start thinking about new data systems, are you all considering like the complexity and, hey, the current data system, some districts, their information is in there late. If you add a new one, what impact that will have? And my last one is the way that we still experience CTE now, still not part of the academic program. So as you think about language and marketing, because I think what you all are doing is really exciting. Like, how do we use language that's sexy to get it really, because like in the community engagement world that we're in, we're using like communities of practice. We're not talking about technical assistance or workshops. There's a community of practice. There's a statewide system of support that we all can go and engage in and learn from other districts. Is that existing yet for CTE? And then how do we get the academic people to know, so that way it can be more known about all of the great work that you all are doing? So I'm just asking y'all to really think about the language and using words that can appeal across, broader scopes of people. So I know that was a lot of different things. And so I don't need answers for all of that today. I just want to put that kind of stuff on the table for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. And I know that the state team will probably be addressing a lot of that. But as I mentioned earlier, like the plan is flexible enough, for them to be able, as a state team, to think through those things that you mentioned, especially like with the language. I think that's always a barrier, and that's nationally. When we talk about CTE, and even when we talk, education speak, we're still talking education speak to folks that don't really understand that or really don't care to understand it. So, how do we, when we think about communication, which is a part of the state team implementation plan that we created, as well as the regional plan, how do we think about those things in new and different ways? And then, of course, like with your data questions, hopefully the state team was jotting those notes down so they can, look a little bit deeper into that. But, the hope is with the data dashboard and the conversations that would need to take place, between both agencies, because, data systems are separate. I get it. We all get it. It's like that nationally, in various states. And people are always asking, how did we get them to communicate? And of course, MOUs and other things that can be developed for shared data agreements. But there also needs to be those discussions about, if we're trying to produce a certain outcome, what kind of conversations do we have to create the type of data share agreements that are going to give us the right type of data that we can massage to put in the dashboard that can be the visual that folks need to see. So, those are definitely things that need to be thought through. But thanks, Joseph, for your comment.
I recognize Member Rodriguez has her hands up. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair McQuillan. And hello, members of the public and committee members. So I just want to thank you, Tony, for your incredible hard work. I came in as this project had already was, on its way. And I remember thinking, wow, this tour seems like something almost impossible. It's going to take somebody very dynamic and, just awesome to make it happen. And as I'm listening to you, I'm just very pleased and I wish you the best and thank you for everything. And I also want to share that there's a blog post of yours on JFF that I actually share excerpts with my students. And so I really appreciate all of your work, this work and everything that you've done to advocate for our kids and for jobs for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Are you talking about the work-based learning blog, learning-based work that? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
What my first job taught me.
Right. Thanks for the shout out. Don't tell anybody about the pictures though. They showed me when I was 15 years old. So, but I appreciate hearing all that. But, it was a team effort. So, the brain trust that JFF, our folks that were part of the team, but, really applaud and kudos to the state teams with the chancellor's office and their staff with LaCandice and Anthony and others, and then the staff at CDE. We were all working tirelessly to figure all this out, and I think we've come to a good place that I just feel like it's just going to get better and continue to grow. The energy and excitement from some of the discussions that we had were definitely contagious, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what next comes out of California as you all move forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Dr. Escobedo, yeah, I see your hand up.
Yes. No, I just wanted to raise up Joseph's concern about ensuring that the public, especially parents, have a good understanding on which schools or districts are doing well in the CTE area, just because how we have our dashboard, that indicator, includes so many other aspects, includes IB exams. It also includes CTE pathways as well. Those students that get awarded, I think, the State of a Seal by literacy, military science, work-based learning. So there's so many factors in our current indicator that it really doesn't give parents a good understanding of how CTE. So how we're able to, obviously we've done a nice job in aggregating the data, but disaggregating it is going to be really critical. So I really look forward to the establishment of a data, kind of like a data dashboard. But the data dashboard has to be allow parents to really disaggregate the scores, right? It can't be an aggregation of so many factors. So just as we're establishing that, I think it's really important for us to begin thinking about how are we going to demonstrate, the growth of CTE in our state.
Thank you, Dr. Escobedo. Again, I want to thank JFF, Jobs for the Future, and Tony for all your work. Great job.
Thank you.
For this item, we're going to open up for public comment now. Rachel, do we have any public comment on item number 2 here?
There's no public comment on this item.
Public comment. Here. I want to move us to item number 3 on our agenda, which is data metrics and reporting back out on our data here. Let's see where we're at here on the script. That concludes any public comment for item number 2, and then we'll move to item 3 here. Would like to welcome back Dr. Torres and Jonathan Eisler, the administrator from the Analysis, Measurement, and Accountability Reporting Division, to update us on the CTIG data metrics. Dr. Torres.
Thank you, Chair McQuillan. Our next item focuses on examining progress in the Career Technical Education Incentive Grant, CTIG program, through the critical lens of data and metrics as outlined in California Education Code Section 53071. California Workforce Pathways Joint Advisory Committee is responsible for making annual recommendations regarding data metrics for CTIG. These recommendations are submitted to the Department of Finance, the Governor's Office, and Policy and Fiscal Committees in the legislature. And specifically, our recommendations must address whether the current metrics remain appropriate for both new and renewal applicants and whether additional metrics should be considered. These recommendations are due by November 30th each year. As we know, leveraging data to understand our impacts will enable us to ensure that we are effectively meeting the needs of our students, that we're meeting our program goals, and that we are able to identify areas where we can strengthen our support to improve student outcomes. CTIG metrics provide invaluable insights into the effectiveness of our programs, provide us with opportunities for improvement, and really it helps us to understand the story of our students' experiences as well as their achievements. And so I am so pleased to introduce Dr. Jonathan Eisler. He is the administrator from our Analysis, Measurement, and Accountability and Reporting Division. And Dr. Eisler and his team have done an amazing job of collecting and analyzing data that helps to inform our decisions and to support all of our program improvements. So Dr. Eisler will walk us through the current metrics, their impact, and our data collection timeline. So Dr. Eisler, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us and for helping us to advance our important work. I'm going to now turn it over to you, Dr. Eisler. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you, Deputy Torres, and thank you so much, CWPJAC committee members and Chair McQuillan. Really appreciate being here. Thank you, Tony, as well. I know you're saying you're going to your next meeting. I really appreciated listening to your presentation. Hard to follow you, and fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, I do not have a blog out there, and I also don't have any photos of 15-year-old me that I'm aware of, but you never know. But it's really wonderful to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I was listening in last year on this presentation, and for those of you who've been with CWPJAC for a little while, you know that we presented, our division presented this information last year. So we're really excited to give an update. Many of you who've been involved with CWPJAC will recognize a lot of these slides. These are the updates focusing on the graduating cohort of the 2021-22 school year. I'm going to make a couple notes in advance of all of these slides so you can kind of follow along. There are 6 different indicators, and of course all of the indicators have sub-indicators, but just a couple notes. First of all, just wanted to say thanks to my colleagues in the Analysis, Measurement, and Accountability Reporting Division, Thomas Koh and Sudha Sharma, who created these data, presented the data that went into these slides, so really appreciative of all their hard work. They draw these data from our student level CalPADS longitudinal data system, as well as our assessments data, and then some of the indicators we'll present towards the end actually come from a survey, and we'll talk a little bit more about those in detail when we get to those slides. Just for reference, the cohort of interest that we're looking at here is the graduating cohort of 2021-2022, and just not to assume understanding, a cohort means it's 4 years worth of high school. So in other words, these students would have been beginning 9th grade in the 2018-19 school year and then progressing through high school. And the expectation is if they're on track for 4-year graduation, they would be completing high school in the 21-22 school year. So just wanted to point that out. So the other thing to kind of mention or think through with all of these slides is what our denominator is. In some cases, that denominator will be all students within that cohort, the 21-22 cohort. I do want to mention, not to get too technical, but most of the time we'll be discussing that total cohort as everyone that's related to Perkins reporting, which means if you compare this against other public reporting that we do in some other instances, it might not be an exact match. So if any of you have like DataQuest open or other places where we report cohort, there might be a small difference just because it's based on what we report for Perkins. So just want to point that out. And also in terms of most of the data files, we'll discuss a subset of information, and that's those students that are specifically involved with the CTE incentive grant, those LEAs that participate in that. So I'll make sure to kind of flag which one, when we're talking about everyone in the cohort, and then when we're talking about those students that are in those LEAs that offer the CTIG grant. Okay, so all of that being said, we'll jump into metric 1. So metric 1 looks at those students completing the CTE coursework. So indicator 1 is looking specifically at those students who completed one CTE course. Indicator 1B is those who completed at least 300 hours of the course sequence in an industry pathway, and that includes the capstone. And they also need to receive a grade of a C- or better in that capstone course. Indicator 1C is those students who have completed exactly 2 CTE courses. And then indicator 1D is those students who have completed at least, so more than 2 CTE courses, but did not necessarily become a completer as defined in 1B above. So those are the 4 kind of different categories that we'll report on for metric 1. Next slide, please. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm going to focus on the right-hand columns first and then move back to the left. So if you look at the right-hand side, those are, again, that denominator, that blue, that 495,000, that is all students in that graduating cohort of 21, 22 per the Perkins definition. And as you can see, 343,000 out of those 495,000 are CTE participants. When you shift to those columns on the left, that is then the subset of those LEAs that are CTE, that receive CTE incentive grant. So as you can see, a little bit smaller, each of those categories, right? 439,000 and change of all students in those LEAs, and then 320,000 are basically CTE participants within those LEAs. Next slide. Okay. And then in terms of indicator 1B, we have, again, same denominator on the right. Oh, I apologize. There is a typo. This is for the 22-23 cohort year. My apologies. In terms of indicator 1B, so this is the actual completers. Again, 93,000 out of 495,000 of all students, whereas in the CTIG, 91,000 out of 439,000. So what's of note here, as you can kind of tell, is that the difference between the completers in the CTIG LEAs versus the non-CTIG LEAs, there's only a handful more, about 2,000 more that are in the non-CTIG. So what that means is that the vast majority of those who are completers are concentrated within those LEAs that are the CTIG LEAs. Next slide. And then in terms of those students who have exactly the 2 CTE course non-completers, again, you can see here 71,000 total overall from the cohort, whereas 66,573 in those CTIG LEAs. And then, not sure where the slide deck went. Is it still there? Okay. And then next slide, please. And then this is for those who had more than 2 CTE courses. Again, just shy of 70,000 total and a little over 65,000 in the CTIG LEAs. Okay. So the second metric that we look at is high school graduation rate, and this is where we get into some really stark differences between the CTIG and non-CTIG and the completers and non-completers. So indicator 2A is an unduplicated aggregate count of students in the adjusted cohort for the graduating class, where the LEA has identified the pupils as having completed 1 CTE course during the 4-year cohort period. And this kind of mirrors metric 1, right? So indicator 2B would be those completers who have done the pathway within the last 4 years. Indicator 2C is those who have exactly 2 CTE courses. And then indicator 2D is those students who have done more than 2 CTE courses. Next slide. So as you can see here, again, we're thinking about the all students within the cohort. The graduation rate was 86.2%. But what really jumps out here is if you look at the CTE participants, it's significantly higher, right? 91.6% graduated in the 4 years. And then if you go down to the very bottom, those CTE participants within the CTIG LEAs even higher at almost 93%. And you can see here the comparisons against, all students who are non-CTIG is much lower. The CTE participants in the non-CTIG LEAs is lower, which is an interesting finding. And then all students within the CTIG LEAs is also higher than the overall. So again, you can see there's a little bit of an effect here of not only kind of individual level of students' graduation likelihood, but also even just the fact that they're within LEAs that are CTIG recipients. And then indicator 2B, this is really dramatic. I would love to frame this and put it up on my wall because this is kind of a really powerful metric here. Look at the CTE completers. 98.6% of the completers are graduating. And of those CTE completers in the CTIG LEAs, 98.7%. So this is just really a powerful and amazing statistic to look at. I know for those of you who saw this presentation last year, it was very similar. I can't remember off the top of my head if it's even higher this year, but just extremely high. I mean, you can't go over 100%, so this is about as high as you can get, which is just remarkable. And again, you can see some of the comparisons of the non-CTIG students, the students in the CTIG, even if they're not completers, et cetera. Next slide. And then again, even for those who have exactly 2 courses, there's still a bump. There's still an increase. So you're looking at 90% of those non-completers, but they've completed 2 CTE courses, so they're still more likely than all students. And again, if you're in a CTIG LEA, if you go all the way to the bottom, 91.2% of those students. So again, there's this kind of halo effect involved with not only having some interaction, some touching of these CTE courses, but then also that effect of being in LEAs that are recipients of the CTIG grant. Next slide. And then again, this is for those who did more than 2. So not surprisingly, these graduation rates are kind of somewhere in between the completers and those who have 2, right? Where if you have more than 2 but you're not a completer, your graduation rate's 93.8%. And then again, if you're in that CTIG LEA, jump to the bottom, it's 94.5%. So this is really, again, something that we really like to highlight to folks and just shows real success, a real kind of a bright spot in terms of a data point that we can present to you all. All right, so metric 3, this relates now back to assessments results. So just to give you kind of an overall look here, this is, so indicator 3A is those students who had a score of level 2, which is standard nearly met or above on Smarter Balanced grade 11 English Language Arts assessment. Indicator 3B is those who scored level 2 or above on the mathematics assessment. Indicator 3 is the number of CTE completers as defined in the CCE associated with the California School Dashboard. We do not have these data yet available, but we will share it out when we do have it available. And if it's okay, I'd like to just quickly refer to not all of Member Williams's questions from the previous slide deck, but I just wanted to mention real quick, we are very excited to announce that last week, the California School Dashboard was published with results from the 2023-24 school year. As I'm sure all of you are aware, the College and Career Readiness Indicator was updated as well. And whereas last year we did not have data available to produce colors for different schools and districts and for the state, this year we do. So if you have not already visited the California School Dashboard website, and this is not a paid endorsement, I promise, visit our webpage. If you go to the CDE webpage, literally the first thing on the top on the right-hand side, you can very easily access it, and you can grab that and you can take a look at the results there. Now, we do not break it down by, whether an LEA is CTIG recipient or not, but you could do some digging and kind of do some cross-checking against, if you know that there are districts that maybe, let's say, in your county or, schools within your area that are recipients or not, it would be very easy to do some comparisons against, between those different LEAs. So just as a reference, and I'm happy, afterwards, if people want to connect with me, if they have questions about that, we can certainly address more specific questions about the dashboard. But again, I would just reiterate, not only the CCI indicator, but obviously graduation rate is updated and English language arts, math, et cetera. So just a shout out to the dashboard as a really powerful resource when you have a chance to check it out. All right, back to metric 3. Metric 3, 3D, this is the number of pupils who have completed college coursework as defined in the College Career Readiness Indicator that is also connected to the California School Dashboard. So we do have data for that, but not yet for indicator 3C. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know this is a little bit difficult to see, but really what you want to focus on is that blue line. So if you look, and again, this is for English language arts. So if you look at the all students at the very top, just shy of 77% of students who took the assessment in 11th grade were at level 2 or above. Whereas for the non-CTE students, it's just slightly lower than that, about 76.4%. But that next line is really dramatic. The CTE completers, almost 84%, 83.5%. And then if you go down lower to the second to last line, the CTE completers within those CTIG LEAs, it's even higher, 83.6%. The other student groups that are kind of flagged there are all pretty close to the average, not really a dramatic difference. But again, you can see what really jumps out is those CTE completers, and then specifically those CTE completers within the CTIG LEAs. Next slide. And not surprisingly, the same kind of pattern holds for mathematics. I'm sure not all of you will be surprised, unfortunately, that the mathematics results are not as strong as the English language arts, but again, relative to each other, the results, the patterns do kind of hold here. So you have 46.7%, 48.7% of students scored level 2 or above in 11th grade in the CASP for that prior year. Whereas the CTE completers, it's 54.5%. The CTE completers in the CTIG LEAs, 54.6%. So again, you can see kind of the dramatic differences between completers versus non-completers, and then the CTIG recipient LEAs and the non-CTIG recipient LEAs. Next slide. And then for indicator 3D, this is number of pupils completing college coursework as defined in the college career indicator. So again, for all students, it's around 14.2%. But when you look at the CTE completers, it's significantly higher, 24.5%, the equal percentage of CTE completers within the CTIG districts. And then as a comparison, if you look at the non-CTE students, it's much, much lower, 8.8%. The non-CTE in the CTIG is also very low at 8.1%. So again, pretty dramatic difference between students involved in CTE in terms of the readiness for via college coursework. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so one thing I want to make sure to flag for metrics 4, 5, and 6 is that these data, this information is actually garnered from surveys that are provided to students. They are collected in a post-secondary survey within the CalPADS data system, and districts are instructed to administer these to CTE completers and to those who are in California Partnership Academy programs only. So just keep that in mind. So that's why when we're looking at the raw numbers here, they're going to be much lower than your kind of overall numbers. We were looking at 400,000, 450,000 in some earlier slides. So just keep in mind that these next slides are going to present much smaller numbers of participants because it's a survey that's administered. So indicator 4A is looking at the number of CTE pathway completers who obtain an industry recognized certification. And then 4B is those pathway completers who have completed work-based learning experience. Next slide. So you can see, again, the overall raw numbers are pretty small here, right? About 1,000 total. But you can see of the CTE completers, there are 500 who obtained an industry recognized certification. And then for the CTE completers within CTIG, just shy of that, about 479. And then so if the non-CTIG, there's only 21 in the non-CTIG LEAs. And then for indicator 4B, this is obviously a much larger group of students. So of the whole cohort of almost 500,000, 30,000 have basically completed this work-based learning experience, but the non-CTE students, it's significantly lower. And then if you look at within the CTIG LEAs, again, that's a much, much larger proportion of that. Overall, 39,000, it's about 38,000. So the vast majority of those who completed work-based learning were within the CTIG LEAs. So again, metric 5 also determined by survey, and this is the number of former pupils who are employed and the types of businesses in which they're employed. So we'll cover both of those aspects within the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of the CTE completers, again, who completed this survey, we have 7,700 out of the overall group that were acknowledging they were employed. And then of those who were in the CTIG LEAs, the vast majority of those, 7,400. And for those who were on the non-CTIG LEAs, about 250 students. Next slide. So this is where we kind of delve into some of the more qualitative pieces of which types of business, which types of industries are these students concentrating. And there's not really a substantial difference between the CTE completers and the CTE completers in the CTE LEAs. So there's not really much difference between those red bars and those blue bars, in other words. But it is really interesting to kind of dive into these data to look at the different types of industries. So as you can see from this particular slide, a huge number are in the hospitality, tourism, and recreation field. We have quite a few in education, child development, and family services, as well as building and construction trades, health sciences, and medical technology, but really all over the place. We even have several students in the fashion and interior design, business and finance, engineering, and so on and so forth. Next slide, and then here's some more categories. So quite a few in the marketing, sales, and service industry, several in public services, several in manufacturing, transportation. Again, for all of you on the committee who are very well versed in a lot of these programs, should not surprise you that this was really kind of reflective of kind of participation in different industries overall. So very wide range of obviously industry participation, as well as large numbers. And then the other category, of course, is pretty large, because not all of these categories adequately capture all of the experiences that former students are involved in terms of employment. All right, next slide. So the final metric here is metric 6, and these are looking at students who are A, in post-secondary education, B, in state apprenticeship programs, and then C, some sort of a job training other than a state apprenticeship program. So needless to say, these map against the different indicators 6A, 6B, 6C. And again, this focus here is just those who are completers. So remember here, the denominator is not all students or even all who are somehow involved in CTE, but rather all of these are the actual CTE pathway completers, respectively. Next slide. So if you look at this top one, this is, again, just the post-secondary educational institutions. And not surprisingly, these are pretty big numbers, right? We know a lot of our students are going on to post-secondary. So just over 30,000 of the CTE completers are moving on to post-secondary institutions. Again, this is also according to this survey. And then of those, the vast majority of those are in the CTE LEAs with almost over 29,000. And then you have a little over 800 in the non-CTE LEAs. For the apprenticeship programs, again, not too surprising, very much smaller numbers as relative to post-secondary. We do have 41 who reported being in these apprenticeship programs, and then 39 of those students were in the CTIG LEAs. And then the final indicator here, 6C, is those students who are in job training other than a state apprenticeship program. So you have just shy of 300 of those students out of the completers, and 288 of those are in the CTIG LEAs. So this is just kind of a good snapshot of all the different 6 indicators. Next slide. Now, one of the things that we think is a really powerful data point, it's not ensconced within any of these other 6 indicators, but we really wanted to kind of point out a really important piece of the data puzzle, which we think is very telling, is we've prepared a couple of slides looking at attendance. So this particular slide here, this is looking at just CTIG LEAs, and this is students across the 4 years of the cohort, and it's broken down by different racial ethnic groups. And so you have the counts on the left, but I kind of want us to focus our attention on the percentages, the rate. So if you look at that first column on the right, in the blue, where you have the non-CTE participants, so you can see for the different racial ethnic groups, you have 72.9% total attendance rate for Native American, Alaska Native, 93.2% for Asian, and so on and so forth. What's really telling about this is as you move along the continuum of CTE buy-in, CTE participation, the attendance rate continues to go up almost universally across all these data points. So if you look at for just participating in a single CTE course for the Native American, Alaska Native group, it goes up 72.9 to 81.5%. If you move over, now you have 2 or more of these course participation, that jumps to 86.6%. And for the completers, well over 90%, almost 93%. And again, you could do this for every single racial ethnic group presented here. Dramatic differences. Look at for black students, 76.5% jumping up to 93%. For Hispanic, 82.1% to 94.4%. So you can see that as students are being more and more involved in CTE in more detail, more engagement, their attendance is increasing dramatically. This particular slide is just for the CTIG LEAs. So we'll go to the next slide. This holds for the non-CTIG LEAs too, by the way. Now, keep in mind this particular slide, some of the cell sizes are a little bit smaller. If you look in particular like at Native American, Alaska Native, Pacific Islander, some of these are smaller cell sizes, so there might be a little bit of bouncing around in terms of the data, but for the most part, if you look here, that same pattern holds, right? For the non-CTE participants, the attendance rate is lower. You go over to the right-hand side, dramatic difference, right? Pretty much almost over 90s for every, 80s and 90% for all of them in the completers group. And then if we go to the next slide, this is now just total. So this is kind of combining the averages, the total for the non-CTIG and CTIG. So this is for everybody. Again, pattern still holds here, right? You have for the Native American Alaska Native going from 67.9% attendance for non-CTE all the way up to 92.6%. And again, that right-hand column is over 90% for all the CTE completers. So again, we find this to be a really, along with graduation and some of these other data points that we provided today, just tells a really powerful story of the importance of CTE, the importance of being involved in an LEA that receives these CTIG grants. And I think, almost universally tells a story of just positivity and a positive outcomes related to these programs, these courses. So I believe that's our last slide, and I'll pass it back to Chair McQuillan, I believe.
Yes. Thank you, Jonathan, and thank your team for all the good work there. Very impressive stats and great data. Thank you for that. And would like to invite our committee members to provide any comments or questions. Remember to raise your hand if you have a comment, and then take yourself off mute. Lower your hand when done. While the committee members are making their comments, I'd like to get the public comment slide up there. But I'll get us started here. Very impressive with the data matrix there. Very, very significant, and makes me want to go to the mountaintop and shout out the report out there. And that's kind of my question. How else are we getting this report out there, being it's so impressive and some fantastic data? And then any differences you see in the rural communities compared to our urban communities, Jonathan?
Let me make sure I'm on. Can everyone still hear me? So we have not done the analyses yet for urban, rural, suburban, but we'll certainly keep under consideration. I think we could all see the value of looking at some of the regional variations. So we have not yet done those types of analyses, but we can look at the feasibility of that, and certainly whatever we find, we're happy to share it back with the committee.
For sure, thank you. And we're sharing this report out in various ways out to the general public.
Yes, the data is shared in a legislative report every year, due November 30th, and that's posted on our website. So this data is encapsulated in that. And this meeting is also on the CWPJAC webpage after a week, so people can come here. And we will also be working on making the slides 508 compliant, so we can post and share those as well.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to recognize Vice Chair Rawlings has his hand up.
Hey, thanks so much. I have, again, another set of questions, and particularly Chair McQuillan, to your point about getting the word out. I'm saying get it out to PTA, get it out to every group we can. Make sure the governor's office keeps having this right in front of them. I know we go in the legislative report, which is always really helpful, but it's really great numbers on a lot of this. And so I'm going to go a little bit out of the order that I wanted to do it in, and start with trying to get real understanding of what's happening here. So I was going to ask for some look into indicator 3C on the completer versus non-completer, and trying to understand what is it about being a completer versus non-completer that's leading to that different outcome, because it's really almost percentages are flipped there, right? And so I think there's certainly something there. My assumption would be that it's the attendance rate is better, right? Which is great. But then my follow-on question to that is, what is it about the programs that our schools are running that is leading to that improved attendance rate, right? Now, my assumption is, just as someone who's been in education for so long, that it's really centered around the experiential part of the learning, and that you're creating a really dedicated cohort, and those that are completers are seeing the value in their education and have closer relationships with their peer groups. That's all just assumptions. So kind of a little bit of a call out to our staff, but as well as anyone maybe watching. If you know anyone that's interested in doing research and maybe a doctoral thesis on some of these topics, this would really be a juicy one to do. So just shout out for that. And then I wanted to know on the metrics 4, 5, and 6. We've been doing those via survey. I know I usually ask about this each year. Is there any potential for data sharing agreements that will get us a larger set of data? Because I take a look at, particularly around metric 6 and a couple of the others, that the response rate of students that meet that category are relatively low. And it would be great to have a larger, like a real sample size for that population. And I've got, I think, 1 or 2 questions after that. So I don't know if anyone can answer on the 4, 5, and 6, whether we can do if there's any agencies out there like EDD or whoever that might be able to do a data sharing agreement with us to get better data on that.
Member Rawlings, this is Jonathan again. I would say this: we are involved with the Chancellor's Office, community colleges, on data sharing generally. So it's certainly something that we can broach with them, at least in terms of data points that they're able to collect. But you're right; it probably would be EDD or someone else that would be able to provide more detailed information. But certainly CDE is willing to engage with other agencies to discuss that for sure.
That's great. That's really helpful. I know I had an event a few months ago with Stuart Knox, and he was open to having discussions about any of the data sharing we might need. So he's very open, receptive to it. And so we'll follow up offline and try and get a little movement on there, because I think there's really something special going on here. And I think any data that we can get, and especially through data sharing agreements that can really help us validate this, I think is just going to really, really show how much these programs are really shining. And so I'm really interested in seeing that and getting that word out more. I'm also interested in, and it might be something you could just provide me offline, which I would be totally okay with, which is a couple of the metrics and getting some disaggregated data on it. So particularly on 3D, I'd be interested in seeing that by region. So if we have like our regional consortia that we might be able to rely on, and just break it down, whatever easy way you have to do it. But 3D by region, I'd be interested in. I would also be interested in 2A and 2B by region. And then also 2A and 2B disaggregated by ethnicity or race, particularly because I know I've seen that before. And what I was really looking at in prior years was we have regional disparities and we have socioeconomic disparities as well. And when I was taking a look at the data, if I recall, the CTE completer category, particularly for CTIG, was really driving equitable outcomes, right? And that, again, is an area where I think deserves a lot more attention, and doing a little deeper dive in not just the the fantastic correlation we're seeing, but really trying to get in and find out what the causation is for some of those improved outcomes. Because particularly I know the community colleges, but as well as CSU and UC, are really looking at how do you drive more equitable outcomes among our populations. And Arizona State University is doing some interesting things that I think kind of mirror what we're doing here with CTIG. And I'd like to see if we can really capture that. And so if I can get that data just offline sent out to me, I'd appreciate it. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate your comments there and the shout out and for a deeper dive on this. I agree with that. Maybe there is a graduate student out there that wants to look at this great data and what is it telling us, and a deeper dive on that is necessary, I think. Thank you. I want to recognize Member Rodriguez. I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for Jonathan for starting to break down the data. I agree with Member Rawlings. I'd like to see us dig a little bit deeper and really answer some questions that I experience in the day-to-day with my students. And I've mentioned this before, I teach high school in a rural community, and students who have often seemed disconnected and disaffected when they start taking CTE classes. They walk a little taller, they demonstrate a sense of purpose and direction. And I think our schools are at a critical juncture. And the sit and get model doesn't work for a lot of our kids that can just get information by Googling it on their phone, right? We really need to start reimagining a way to align our students' needs with today's learners. And CTE is a shining example of how we can engage and inspire and empower our students to find their passions and see their potential. So thank you. And I also want to, being that this is Thanksgiving week, express all of my appreciation to the CTE teachers who serve as models and make a vision for our students a reality every day.
Thank you. Member Escomido, did I see your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate what Bill said. I remember seeing some of this data disaggregated, and I believe it was either San Bernardino or it might have been Bakersfield, who had a significant higher completers. And I'm just wondering, why, how to compare with regions. And then I would highly, because I do communicate with some of our superintendents. They never get to see this data, and I think it's really critical that this data is presented at a county level and a regional level as part of their superintendent meetings, because I think that we have structures already in place to systemically send out messaging, and we need to use those structures to really look at their program and then maybe learn on some of the exemplars in our state.
Great comments. I like that. Getting the word out there more. All right. Any other comments or questions from our committee?
I just want to say thank you for everybody's feedback, and just reiterate my thanks for the invitation. Really always enjoyed talking with you all, so thank you.
Great work, Jonathan. Great reporting. Rachel, do we have any public comment on this item number 3? I want to open it up for public comment. Remind the public you have 2 minutes.
There appears to be no public comment on this item.
That closes public comment for item number 3 here. I'm going to move us to our 4th and final item. which is general public comment. Are there any general public comments on items that are not on our posted agenda? Do we have any general public comments, Rachel? We'll open this up.
We do have one from Carol Tsushima from SBCSS. Earlier, she asked, in the K-12 system, are there any thoughts around the need of LEAs to apply for multiple grants? CTIG, Strong Workforce Program, K-16, CAL, GSPP, CPA, et cetera, to build, expand, and maintain pathways, and the need for LEAs to spend resources, people, time, et cetera, on attaining and managing these varied grants. And that is all of the public comment under the general category.
Great, thank you, Rachel. We're going to close general public comments. We want to thank everyone for coming to this meeting today. Thank our committee members. Do we have any other general thoughts or reflections from our committee members towards the future? We'll open that up for our committee members. All right, hearing none. I see our proposed meeting times in the future are we're slated to have a meeting in March of 2025, the next time at 9:30. The date will be posted at a later time. And then again, July, September, and November in the future. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. A very productive meeting, great statistics and great reporting from our staff. And I'd like to adjourn this meeting at 11:07 a.m. today. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Member McQuillan.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Great reports, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a great week.